It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the films of April 3rd, 1998. And we got 5 movies to look at today, and we're going to start off with the first one here, the movie that finally knocked Titanic off as the #1 movie at the box office after 15 weeks. You would think a good film would come from that, but what we got was, not so much. It's, Lost in Space. I would have thought maybe Titanic would have lost its #1 spot to a much better film, but instead, it lost to the flavor of the month. I mean, basically the flavor of the week, because Lost in Space, I mean, the marketing campaign behind this movie was pretty good. It's a high-budgeted film, cost $80 million. This is a film that you would probably see in the summertime, but they moved it up closer to April, so hopefully to get some traction before the summer movie season starts, and needless to say, it didn't do that good of a business that they wanted to, and really, if you saw the movie, you could definitely see why. Despite the good cast they have in here, William Hurt, Matt LeBlanc, Gary Oldman, Heather Graham, Mimi Rogers, a cool-looking ad campaign, to say the least. When you actually watch the film, it's really one of the corniest, most dullest things you'll ever see. Like, this show this movie makes the TV show look like a masterpiece by comparison. And the TV show was good, campy fun, but this is a mess on so many levels. I mean, the acting in here is really dull. William Hurt, a great actor, is just wasted in here. He's only got one note throughout the course of the movie. The story isn't really all that engaging or exciting. Gary Oldman as Dr. Smith should be really interesting, but they just make it stupider by the end of the movie with his master plan that he has at the end of the film. And then it gets even stupider than that when you add in this really bad-looking CGI effect named Blarp. Look, first of all, Blarp, this is a movie that's supposed to take itself seriously, and you have a character that's literally named Blarp. Like, I don't know what's worse, the name or the CG effect. It's kind of a tie between the two of them. But the CG looks absolutely horrible on him. And way to waste a good majority of the cast from the original show. I mean, you hear the robot's voice, which is the same guy who does the voice for the robot in the TV series. You have June Lockhart also in here in a cameo. There's also other people involved in here that were a part of the Lost in Space TV series. And this was the end result of it. This was the end result of it all. Nothing happens of noteworthiness in this film whatsoever. This movie just has way too much stupidity going for it to make itself stand out on its own, or even be somewhat entertaining. At least with the Star Trek films, they were able to work. The Star Trek films worked because they took inspiration from the show, but they made them their own things. This just feels like a really bad knockoff of what the Star Trek films eventually were supposed to be. Like the Star Trek films. It's like it's dumber than what the Star Trek films are. Basically, what I'm trying to say here, and like it's just one of the stupidest things I've ever seen. It's a movie that has so much potential to it, and just nothing is there. They have no idea what to do with this except cash in on the name because Lost in Space is a profitable name, and just do whatever we can to get people's butts in the seats. Which that first weekend it worked, but after that, everyone kind of realized, oh wait, this is a steaming pile of garbage. Let's go somewhere else. Let's go back to Titanic again. Yeah, and I was like, I feel like a lot of people were like Bill Paxton in the movie. Are you ready to go back to Titanic? And they're just like, yes, let's get away from this, please. And yeah. So basically, what I'm trying to say here is that the movie is pretty bad. I mean, what do you expect from the writer of Batman and Robin and the director of Blown Away? I mean, better directors, better writers could have made this work. A better story could have made this work. Actually letting the cast act in this movie instead of just being stereotypes and having the most bland dialogue in the film. I'm sorry, William Hurt in this film, he's a mess in this film. Like, his big moment where he's supposed to say goodbye to his wife, and he goes like, I love you, wife, and he has just this look on his face like he doesn't give a crap whatsoever. Like, I just don't know, man. This is a bad movie. Avoid this one like the plague at all costs. And it may have finally knocked off Titanic as the #1 film, but it really wasn't worth it in the end. So yeah, that's Lost in Space, and the weekend's just getting started because we have some gems for you this week. Let's go to the next one, and that is Bruce Willis and Alec Baldwin in Mercury Rising. So Bruce Willis plays this FBI agent who's protecting a 9-year-old autistic boy who was targeted by the these government assassins after he cracks a top-secret government code. Which, I mean, the idea for it is actually not a bad idea. It could make for a very interesting film. You have a good director involved here, too, with Harold Becker. Harold Becker, of course, is the guy that gave us stuff like Taps and The Onion Field, The Black Marble, Vision Quest, Sea of Love, Malice, movies we've talked about in the past here. This is actually his second-to-last film he's ever done as a director, and this was actually intended to be a Barry Sonnenfeld directed film. I didn't realize this until I did the research on it, that Barry Sonnenfeld was going to be the director for this, but he dropped out because of Men in Black. Arguably, honestly, that was probably the best move for him, but still, it would have been interesting to see what he would have done with a more dramatic film like this, but they brought Harold Becker in, which is not a bad choice for a director, but the movie itself, it doesn't really have enough there to keep you invested in the storyline. I think it has a good idea to it. Bruce Willis is trying his best in this film, and the kid in here, Micah Hughes, is actually pretty good in the film, all things considered, but the film overall is pretty generic and pretty forgettable. It doesn't really have that spark to really get it going. It has a good idea to it, just not the best execution, and you want to go along for it because it is such it's such an intriguing idea based off of a really good book, Simple Simon, which is the working title of the film, but yeah, the film itself is nothing really all that special. It's kind of bland, it's kind of mediocre. It doesn't really have a whole lot there to really make it something you really need to see. And it's mostly forgettable. It's a film that doesn't really have a whole lot there to make it work, despite a really good concept overall. I think a better rewrite of the script probably would have made this a whole lot better. But as it is, it's a pretty lackluster film. Nothing too bad, but nothing too great either. It's kind of it's just a mostly forgettable film. And the hits keep on coming with our next film, and that is Barney's Great Adventure, the movie. Yeah, so even by 1998, Barney's success was kind of dipping a little bit. He wasn't the big name that he was in the middle, like in 92 and 93, when most people knew who he was because when the show was on PBS Kids. I mean, I grew up this was right at the time when I grew up with Barney. I mean, my mother still loves Barney even to this day, even though he hasn't been on the air for what, like over 10 years or something like that. But my family watched this as a kid. Watched this when I was a little kid. I watched the Barney specials on TV. There was one on NBC in '94 that we watched on Easter. I think it was Easter Sunday of that year. But there was also a whole bunch of. I had the Barney toys. I had the Barney shirts. But like I said, I grew up as a kid around that time period. It was perfectly set for my time period. But yeah, nowadays I could easily see the flaws of a Barney movie and a Barney TV series. Which speaking of some interesting fun facts here, I talked about how Barry Sonnenfeld was going to direct Mercury Rising. Guess who was offered $1.5 million to direct this film? And you would not think about this in any way, shape, or form, but Trey Parker, the co-creator of South Park, was offered $1.5 million to direct this film, and the crew saw that he could do funny things with kids since he did The Spirit of Christmas, the short that eventually led to South Park, but Parker eventually turned down the film. But again, kind of like with Barry Sonnenfeld and Mercury Rising, I would have killed to find out what a Trey Parker Barney movie could look like. But you know, Daniel Kaluuya is working on a Barney movie right now, so maybe that's what that's going to be. But the film, yeah, I'm not going to sugarcoat it with you. I mean, it's not made for an adult like me nowadays. For a kid, for little kids, it's passable for what it is. But at the same time, there's nothing really all that special about Barney. He's kind of a one-note character when you really look at him. I think Nostalgia Critic, when he did his Barney's Great Adventure review, kind of perfectly sets the tone for everything that's wrong with Barney as a whole. Like, he's not an investing character. He has one emotion and one note throughout the course of everything that he's in. And he's got to be happy. He's got to be excited. Like, he can't be too serious about a subject matter. Like, Barney will not last a day on Sesame Street, because Sesame Street takes time to tackle heavier subjects at play, and but this, I can't really hate it per se, because like I said, it knows exactly what it's for. It's for little kids. It's made exclusively for little kids. And even by the time this movie came out, I was watching it, I was just like, yeah, at 9 years old, I'm definitely too old for Barney right now, and yeah, I would not suggest anybody over the age of 7 watch this movie. I mean, for kids, it's fine for what it is, but at the same time, you want to give your kids something much more clever than this. I mean, little kids will definitely get a kick out of it, but for me personally, I was just it's not for me. It's not for any adult, honestly. Like 2 to 7 years old is probably the perfect age for this film. But other than that, though, the more I get older, the more I'm just thinking about what that Trey Parker Barney movie would have been like. Like, seriously, I need to see some of those concepts that they were talking about when they were thinking about doing this, because I really would have loved to see what he would have brought to the table with this. But yeah, like I said, it's a Barney movie. Like, your little kids will like it, but really, you should give them something a lot better than this to be entertained by. Like, don't let a movie like this babysit your kids. Really, like, find something else better for them. Like, seriously. But I'm just blabbering on right now. That's pretty much all I got to say about this Barney's Great Adventure. Let's go ahead and move on to a far superior movie and a much darker movie than Barney's Great Adventure. Neil Jordan's The Butcher Boy. If Taika Waititi didn't take inspiration from this movie for Jojo Rabbit, I'm going to be pleasantly surprised by that, because this movie has a lot of ideas, and the way it's filmed, the way it's put together. I swear, there were times that I thought, this kind of reminds me of a Taika Waititi-oriented project, like something more like Jojo Rabbit, except Jojo Rabbit takes place 20 years before this in a different country. But basically, the story of The Butcher Boy is that you're following this 12-year-old Irish boy who is retreated into a violent fantasy world to escape the reality of his dysfunctional family as his circumstances worsen, his sanity deteriorates, and he begins acting out with increasing brutality. I mean, needless to say, this is much more heavier than a Taika Waititi movie. Excuse me. But it's a pretty damn good movie. It's a film that is kind of underappreciated in terms of Neil Jordan's other works. It is very, very dark, very comedically over the top, very much a black comedy that almost is kind of like a mix between a Taika Waititi film as well as a Monty Python movie back from the glory days. I mean, I feel like it meshes together in this particular film, and the acting overall, really good stuff here. The young boy, Eamon Owens, is really good in here. So is Stephen Ray. Fiona Shaw is also in here. Brendan Gleeson, Sinead O'Connor is in this film playing the Virgin Mary. Rest in peace, Sinead O'Connor. She just died recently, as of the day I'm recording this in August of 2023. But the movie overall is really good. It's a very stylized film, a very dark black comedy. It has a really good cast involved here, some good darker moments, but it's a really good film. And the last film for the Geffen Film Company, what a way to go out with this film. I think it was a film that was maybe too ahead of its time, maybe. I think nowadays this movie would have been appreciated a little bit more. And it's a really good, underrated film. I'd say definitely check it out. It's definitely well worth the time to check out. So, that's The Butcher Boy. But let's get to probably the best movie overall this weekend, and that is David Mamet's The Spanish Prisoner. Of course, Steve Martin has a role in this film, and he's really one of the best things about the movie. I'll delve into him when it comes to the casting in this in just a little bit, but this is David Mamet's writing and directorial effort, in which it basically tells the story of a corporate espionage conducted by an elaborate confidence game, and you have people like Campbell Scott, Rebecca Pidgeon, Ben Gazzara, Felicity Huffman, and Ricky Jay among the cast in here. And the casting overall is great in the film. Steve Martin, usually, this is a rare dramatic performance from him, where he still gives kind of a lighthearted comedic performance to this, but it's more dramatic than some of his other stuff. Like, it reminded me of Pennies from Heaven, which was a very criminally underrated movie that he did back in the 80s, and this is probably one of his strongest performances ever. I mean, this is a really good performance he gives in this film that really should have given him an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor. But the rest of the cast in this movie is really good, too. Campbell Scott, Ben Gazzara, Felicity Huffman, Ed O'Neill's in here, Clark Gregg, Jonathan Katz. Just a really good, phenomenal cast. And the writing of David Mamet. David Mamet does not usually write a lot of bad stuff, and in this movie, it's another really good concept here of Mamet's shtick. Like, it's been known as Mamet speak, where he's famous for his dialogues, which are characterized by incomplete sentences, foul language, stutters, restarts, and interruptions. And it's once again what you come for with a David Mamet film, and it's the film overall is very reminiscent of a modern day Hitchcockian type of thriller. It's a very solid, entertaining film, keeps you on the edge of your seat, keeps you invested in what's going on, with a great score by Carter Burwell, a phenomenal cast, It's just a really, really great film. Easily the best film to come out this weekend, hands down. Definitely seek The Spanish Prisoner out if you haven't seen it already. So with that said, that wraps up another edition of Time About the Movies, and we've got another big one next week. 11 movies to look at, so we have stuff like Nicolas Cage and Meg Ryan in City of Angels, the sequel Species 2, Ice Cube's directorial effort, The Players Club, Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau teaming up for the last time in The Odd Couple 2, Billy Crystal and My Giant, The Three Ninjas sequel, High Noon at Mega Mountain, The Big One, I Think I Do, Son of Teen, The Last of the High Kings, and Stolen Moments. So 11 films to look at next time. Brace yourself. It's going to be a long one next time. So with that said, thank you very much for watching. And if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page. Check out the previous episode. And also don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this. So with that said, thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time. And until then, as always, take care.